From the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University, this is Writers Talk. I'm Doug Dangler, coming to you today from Ohioana Book Festival 2011. I am happy to be talking to Kiki Howell, whose book Torn Asunder, which she has right here, tells us a tale of mystery, intrigue, witchcraft, and she's going to tell us more about that. So welcome, Kiki Howell.
Thank you.
Tell me about your book. Tell me about Torn Asunder. This is your second book, am I right?
No, actually, I've written several, but a lot have been short stories in anthologies, a lot of novellas that are just ebooks. This is my first full-length novel. Okay,
so tell me about the story. Tell me about what led you into writing this.
A lot of the stories, I tend to get inspiration from studying Wicca. I'm not Wiccan myself, but I'm fascinated by the religion, and a lot of the spells just spark story ideas.
Okay.
And this was no different. I was looking at a book of elemental spells, and I wanted to create a spell that would use all four elements. And in doing that, I came up with the idea of, because a lot of times after I read the Wiccan stuff, then I take it into the paranormal realm.
Well, how is Wicca not paranormal? I guess because the idea is that that's more nature-based than the paranormal?
Right, and Wicca is a religion where the spells are more just prayers. And it would be, if you write about straight Wicca, which I have, it's considered magic realism. Okay. It doesn't fall into the paranormal genre, unless then all of a sudden the Wiccan, the witch can, create fire from her fingers, then it becomes paranormal, which is what I usually do with it. I start with the spell and then I pull it into paranormal. So for this one, I wanted the elemental spell to shift, to take a witch and make her be able to create a shapeshifter. So that's how it got started. She creates a spell of her own to protect herself from man, and it's broken her heart. And she turns him into an elemental being, and it's part of all four animals that represent the elements.
Okay. It's not a revenge plot, though.
No, no, not revenge.
Okay. So what is your background as a writer? How did you get started? You said you started writing short fiction, right?
I always wrote as a kid. I always wanted to write, but I even went to college that was my goal. I became an English teacher so I could support myself. I could start writing. Life just decided that wasn't what was going to happen. And so it took about 10 years after having my kids. I was a stay-at-home mom to finally get back into and realize that I have these voices in my head and I need to...
And those weren't just the children yelling at you.
No,
there were other
they
voices.
were other voices.
Okay.
So yeah, I needed to do it again. My husband was extremely supportive of saying the kids are in school now. You have the house to yourself for 8 hours. Don't answer the phone unless it's the school. And write.
So you're saying that not just a room of your own, but you also need caller ID to be a writer. Okay,
yes.
Good. Or just have one special line to the school. What have you learned as a writer as you've grown through this that really surprised you? You thought, I thought really writing was going to be X, but it turned out to be Y. How is this writing all this stuff changed you?
Well, I never expected to write in erotic romance. I fell into that. My husband was trying to get me back into writing. I was having an awful time. I had every excuse. The school needed me, the kids needed me. There was another PTO meeting. He gave me a book of writing exercises, and in that was to write a story in a genre you're not comfortable with. So just 2 cities over is the world's largest erotic romance publisher, Laura's Cave, and that was my first experience.
What are the 2 cities over?
I'm in Kent, and that's in Hudson, so which is 2 cities over from where I live. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So it was
Hudson is the little town with the really fancy school, right? The Western Reserve
Academy.
Academy.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So it houses those 2 things.
It does.
We've just lost the Hudson viewership. Okay, go on.
So that was my first experience. I was uncomfortable in the fact that I'd never read anything that was erotic romance before. So I did this exercise. My husband was in Israel at the time. First phone call from him, explosions in the background. I couldn't sleep. So I did all the writing exercises. I wrote a short story that was erotic romance. He came home, he read it, and he said, send it off, see what somebody says, and I got a contract.
Awesome.
So I figured I'll stay with the genre.
Yeah, it must be your genre. Then you've found a home. What other genres did you experiment with? Where did you start besides writing in this? It seems like you found that pretty quickly after you were doing the exercises and went with that. But have you worked in other genres?
I always knew I'd do paranormal. I mean, that's just where I read. Even as a kid, I was reading ghost stories probably before I should, watching scary movies long before I was of age. My dad was a manager of a cable company. So.
Well, we're getting all the dirt today. Yeah, that's...
You are.
Okay.
So I knew I would do paranormal. I knew I would do romance.
Okay. What attracts you about those genres, since you've been attracted to them from a kid?
I think escape. I'm Pisces, emotional. The way I react to the world is sometimes a little more heightened than it should be. Okay. I just like being away from it, reading it, and writing it in my own head. Everything else just disappears.
Okay. And reading it, is that experience for you that it isn't, say, for sci-fi?
Right. I don't even read sci-fi. I just stick really close to paranormal. I don't know why. And I now review for Suspense Magazine, and they do just the paranormal for that. So reading's just as important.
Okay. When are you going to let your kids read your books? How old do they have to be? Since you were reading and watching movies before you should have, how old were?
And my kids have watched movies, scary movies, before they should have. But they're boys. 30. Okay. So 30 years old. Yeah, and I don't think that they'll be interested in writing, a chick romance,
Okay.
you know? I mean, even my husband, as supportive as he is, you know what I mean? It's not what he would pick up normally, and I understand that, and I'd prefer never to answer your question.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, Kiki Howell, I thank you very much for being here today on Writers Talk. And the book, again, is Torn Asunder, and it can be purchased in any number of places, including here today at the Ohioana Book Festival. For those of you who are watching later, you can go to ohioana.org and find out more about it. It's an annual event. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.